My students, so glad to have you with me again. This is the School of the Prophet. We are doing lecture number 5. I'm so excited about it because when I was studying and getting ready for it, I got so excited I actually started shouting because it's all about time and space. And so during this time, I'm going to do my utmost to get everything in. But I'm teaching you about your destiny and how to get there. And you've had some amazing questions that you've asked me. And I love that session where we just did your questions and we gave some answers. Well, today it's a very serious one because you have to understand that you could skip a beat. You could actually lose out. And there's a way of getting back into step. Remember I taught you in Galatians chapter 5, and I'll read it to you very quickly again. And we're talking about keeping in step. We're talking about rhythm. We're talking about breathing. This is all very important today. I'm going to give you a lesson as well that is sort of non-prophetic, but I want to teach you something about breathing because breathing is very vital for your existence. And what I read in Galatians 5:25, if we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. Meaning this, if we are breathing according to the Spirit, then we must keep in step, or we are able to keep in step with the Spirit. That simply means that if your breathing is correct, you won't lose momentum. You won't lose time. You say, what's this got to do with destiny? It has so much to do with it. To get where you want to go, you have to do something that you've never done. Your future isn't something that you wait for. It is something you help create using your imagination. Very important that you understand that your imagination comes into play now. So you make it exciting. It's like seeing the future in black and white, and then you fill in all the colors. That's what God gives you. That's a privilege He gives you in this regard. You are equipped to bring into existence what has never existed before. Think about that. You can bring something into existence. You know why? Because you are a created being. You have God's image. And what is the one thing that God can do that the enemy cannot do? That is create. You and I have the power to create. Think about having a child, how incredible that is. You are able to, in a union, you are able to produce a child of your own. That's creation. God gave us that power. So it is with destiny. There has to be a union. There has to be a oneness with the future and with your present in order to bring it about. That's how incredible this is. So, don't wait for your future to show up. Don't wait for it to show up. Go out and meet it. Introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Kim. Pleased to meet you, prophetic. You're supposed to be inside of me. In fact, you are. Now let's have a union. Let's have a marriage of the invisible and the visible, of the future and the present. And I'm going to teach you that today and how unique you are. You must determine to create a world. You say, Kim, the world's already created. Your world, the world for your family, a world for your friends that they can be a part of, a unique world. You know, today, everything is so irrelevant. There's so many repetitions. There's so many imitations. So somebody just sent me an email saying, look at this copycat. They copied everything you're doing. And I said, I quoted that proverb, imitation is the best form of flattery. And so I said, let them do it. Even Paul says, imitate Christ in me. Imitate me. So anyway, to get on, we're living in a world that is really, they have creative power, but they prefer to imitate. They prefer to copy someone else and even try and perfect it when in fact it's not their very own thing. And that's why I want you to understand that you have the ability to create your own culture, your own world. And that's what's so beautiful about this. Don't ever forget that you can do something that has never been done before. And I'm praying and hoping that as I'm teaching you, that you as my students would understand that I want that to be accomplished in your life, to be able to create something that's never been done before, or bring into existence something that has never been there before. Just imagine if you could do that. Even a child coming into the world is something that nobody else has ever done because of the unique DNA, the unique blood print and fingerprint. That's how unique it should be with you, with your spiritual intercourse as well, because in life there is such a thing as a marriage of spirit, a marriage of the invisible and the visible. That's what I want you to understand. So, Do you realize that there is such a thing as spiritual breathing? Now, this may be a new term to you, and you are my students. I haven't used it anywhere else. I'm teaching you stuff that I have not taught before. You may hear it later on, but now at this point, it's for you only to understand this because I'm teaching you specifically. That's why I'm sitting here. They've got a harness on me because I'm a prophet. You know what I'm like? I'm running everywhere and moving. I'm focused so that you and I can understand what it takes to get to your destiny. Not only that, but to bring into existence something that only you can do. God's got nobody else but you to do that. So, what did Jesus say about spiritual breathing? That's a terminology that I want you to take down. This is going to be, Hannah, this is going to be one of the questions we're going to speak about, is spiritual breathing. Okay, what is spiritual breathing? Well, Kim, my spirit doesn't need to breathe. It absolutely does. That's why he said, walk in the Spirit and live in the Spirit. Live is breathe, and I'll teach you those words in a few minutes in the Greek. Okay. One of the things I've been teaching recently as well is the spirit of Pythos. For those that attend my Tuesday Bible study from the Matrix, you would have heard me speak about the spirit of Pythos. What is Pythos? In my previous lectures, I've spoken about divination as well. And I'm going to just go quickly into it for a minute. About Pythos, the spirit of Pythos, which is the word python, is a non-venomous snake that can only attack its victim by getting close to it. A python has poor eyesight, poor hearing, and so it gathers the dust by its tongue going out and the chemicals in the air, and that's how it knows where you are. So hear this, please. This is important. It squeezes the life and the breath out of its victim so that it can no longer breathe. That's what the spirit of Pythos is. I cannot be teaching you today on breathing in the spirit without you understanding that that's the way he does it. A familiar spirit comes to you and tries to get you off guard so you'll do something else that you were not created to do. And that thing gets close to you, and if there's a lot of dust, it can get close quickly. What does that mean? A lot of dust speaks of flesh. He shall eat the dust. So it's speaking about flesh. If you are very carnal, if you act carnally and you're very physical about your life, and you're not spiritual, it means there's a lot of dust and you can draw that spirit towards you. Now, that means you're dissatisfied. What did Jesus say in Matthew chapter 4, verse 4, which I taught you as well? Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. Let's talk about that word live. And let's explain the Greek words for live. First of all, the three words to describe the word live, they all speak about breathing. So Jesus was saying, man will not breathe, get his nourishment. Because you're going to find out when I show you in a few minutes that breathing is vital for your existence in the Spirit and to keep up in step with the Spirit. The word live there, which is breathe, is theoneuo. Theoneuo. That means breathing with God. Theo, God. Neuo means breathe with God. Okay? Suko is the next word, and we'll write these down as well. Suko is spirit breath. You'll see it there. Suko is spirit breath. So there is breath in the Spirit. Because you and I are breathing like this now, and we're saying, well, that's to keep alive. I need oxygen in this time and space. But you also need that in the Spirit. And that's why the Spirit has to breathe as well. The Spirit has to be nourished as well. Your spirit was dead in sin and had to come alive. And that came alive because the Spirit breathed on you and you came to life. Am I right about that? Yes. Your spirit does not suddenly exist. It lives in your body, and there has to be a perfect alignment for you to get to the place where you become the person that created the very thing that you've dreamed about. You are the only one that can do it. Nobody else can do it. They can assist you. So suko means spirit breath. Zoe nuo is the next word, or the suko, it's theoneuo is the first one, breathe with God. Suko means spirit breath, that's you, spirit breathing. And zoe nuo. Zoe, everybody knows what zoe means. It's zoe life. It's an abundance. Zoe nuo means to make alive. In other words, when you are breathing with God, and when your spirit is breathing and it is in time with the Spirit, walking and living in the Spirit, you are able to use that to make others alive, to bring to life. Isn't that incredible? You have the power to make alive, but there has to be an alignment with God. Spiritually, you have to be breathing with God, and you've got to be walking in the Spirit for this to happen. Now, let's talk about losing your breath. There are people who lost their breath and could not keep in step with the Spirit. Now, I think everybody understands that when you lose your breath, anybody that needs oxygen or has bad lungs will tell you what happens when you lose breath, when you cannot breathe freely. What happens to you? You slow down. People with emphysema will tell you the same thing. They can only do so much. They're slowing down. So if it works like that in the natural, it works like that in the Spirit as well, sweetheart. That's how it is. If you breathe in the natural, there's breathing in the Spirit, which means if you lose breath, you slow down. And the one thing you don't want to do is get out of step with the Spirit. And I'll share a few things about that. Who got out of step with the Spirit? King Saul. Let's use him as an example. He was one of those that lost his breath. How did he lose his breath? How did he create a whole lot of dust? How did he get out of step? Because he was obedient. He was self-willed. Eventually, he was so jealous of King David that he began to chase after him, and all of his power and strength was used to get David. That's all he did. And what happened? He lost his breath. Aaron and Miriam lost their breath and lost their step and almost lost out when they began to accuse Moses because he'd married an Ethiopian woman, to the point where God had to say to him, "Come here into my temple. I'd like to talk to you about my servant Moses." And so they insulted him, and what happened? She got leprosy, and they lost their breath and lost step for a while. Moses lost his breath and lost his step for a while when he struck the rock. When God said to him, "I don't want you to strike the rock this time. I want you to stay in the Spirit and stay in step with the Spirit, but we're going to be spontaneous. I want you to speak to the rock." And Moses, out of his anger, did not do it, and he struck it again, and he lost his timing, and he lost his breath. What does that mean? It means he lost a perfect spiritual alignment, and things started going wrong. We blame so many things for going wrong, but we don't realize that when we get out of alignment, we actually bring things upon ourselves. That's what happens. You cause this chaos in the universe because of your obedience. Think about this. The angels, the seraphim, the cherubim, every created force in the angelic world is in perfect step and in order. As I taught you 2 lectures ago, I taught you about keeping order while there's still things going on. They are in order. And those that did rebel against God were kicked out of the heavenlies. 1/3 of the angels. They brought chaos, and as a result of that, there was a loss of step, of timing at least. Okay, so you understand that if it has to be like that in the heavens, it has to be like that on earth as well. Jonah, he also got out of step and lost his breath. How? Because he was the wrong place. He ended up going to the wrong place. Speaking about spiritual alignment, let me just teach you that for a few minutes, because you need to understand that your body and your spirit have to be aligned. So God says to Jonah, "I want you to go to Nineveh." So what happens? Now I'll try and illustrate as best I can. You know, the other day on the Bible study from the Matrix, we had a little fun thing going on where I started talking and I said, I should do a little puppet show and so I can give examples. But anyway, I was doing that, and I'll do that for you now. But think about Jonah for a minute. Here he is, God's will, God's presence, and God's spirit for Jonah is in Nineveh. So Jonah's spirit, and I know it's very simplistic, but just bear with me. His spirit is going towards Nineveh, because your spirit, man, is not restricted like we are restricted. We're afraid, we don't want to do it, so our flesh wars against the spirit. So there's this war going on with the spirit and the flesh, because the flesh says, "I'm not going to Nineveh." The flesh says, "I don't want to be a prophet." The flesh says, "I don't want to do this," but the spirit knows the will of God. Your spirit knows the will of God. So the spirit starts making its way towards where it's supposed to be, the will of God. And your flesh says, "I ain't going there." And goes another way. Wherever Jonah was going, he got on a boat to get away. And so there was a split that took place. What happened? He started losing his breath. What happened? There was chaos. There were storms. Why? Because the spirit and the flesh man were not aligned. It is very important that you understand that that is an issue here. When God spoke to Ananias in the book of Acts and said, go to Straight Street to the house of Judas, where there is a man by the name of Saul who is praying and waiting for you, Ananias said, but Lord, he has the power, and started arguing because his flesh didn't want to do it. But it was too late. Now, here's a very important thing for me to teach you. If you ever look at that scripture in Acts, you'll see it's an incredible story in Acts chapter 9, where Ananias says to God, I can't really go because Saul has been given the power to take us and to kill us even and bind us and go to Jerusalem. He doesn't know that Saul of Tarsus has been struck by lightning or by light and is blinded. But this is what I find fascinating, and I've taught this before, so I'll just go through it quickly, is that God says to Ananias, you have to go, because Saul in a vision has seen a man by the name of Ananias, because your spirit is in that vision. Your spirit is already there, but you are saying to me, I cannot go to Straight Street, I'm afraid, but it's too late because your face is in the future. When I gave the vision to Saul, he saw your face, Ananias. You have no choice, or you do. You can cause the most chaos ever in your own life, or you can align because your spirit has already gone to the future. Your spirit is breathing from the future. Your spirit cannot breathe from the past. It cannot breathe from the present. It cannot breathe from fear. It cannot breathe from anything else. It breathes vision. It breathes from vision. It breathes from the future. I know I'm getting through to you. I know you're understanding this, but I'm making my point so that you can see why disobedience can get you out of alignment. So when Ananias left that place and went to Straight Street, knocked on the door, he was shaking. But the minute he walked through the door, the door opened and there was Judas saying, we've been expecting you. What happened? Ananias stepped into his perfect role, and there was spiritual alignment, and he snapped into power, and destiny was in the making right there, unfolding before him. He became another man. He stood there and said, Brother Saul, God has sent me here to raise you up. He prays for him. His eyes are open. He baptizes him. I mean, he goes all the way. Why? Because when you are spiritually aligned, when you are aligned perfectly with your spirit and with the will of God and your destiny, you become another man. You become another woman. You become bold. You become confident. You know why? Because this is where I was supposed to be. This is what I was born for, and now I understand it. But before you get there, you will fight it and go crazy. So I need you to understand that it's very important for you to understand that aspect of it, that you have to breathe. You have to breathe spiritually. Okay, now let me take a breath. Lose your breath and you lose your step. Got it? The Bible says keep in step with the Spirit, because if you live in the Spirit, breathe in the Spirit, you will stay in step with the Spirit. Now, let me give you a little lecture from Dr. Clement. Breathing. I want to talk to you for a few minutes about how breathing can affect your physical body, your mental state. And this is where I think the spirit of Pythos is a very important teaching, because this is how it operates. It's called unbalanced breathing. The examples that I've given you are about people that had unbalanced breathing. So their spiritual breathing was out of its sorts. They had a rhythm problem in their breathing from their heart. Okay, I'm talking about spiritually now. And they caused chaos wherever they went. There are many causes of anxiety: food additives, sugar, adrenal dysfunction, and other internally consumed substances. Situations in life that are threatening or seem so will cause anxiety. The idea that you do not have enough time, listen to this, the idea that you do not have enough time is a huge cause of anxiety. Stop right there, because I'm going to teach you on time in a few minutes, okay? And this lecture is not only for you spiritually, it's for this as well. The idea that you do not have enough time is a huge cause of anxiety. Have you ever run out of time? Have you ever been late for something and it's a very important appointment? What happens to you? Think about what happens to you. You stress, your whole body begins to react. What happens? You're late. I'm supposed to be on time. I'm not. And a whole lot of presuppositions take place. How it's going to turn out? What does that cause? Stress, anxiety. Think about it. The idea I don't have enough time. Where is time? Is it in the past? No. Where is time? Is it now? No. Where is time? Time is in the future. Okay? But Kim, I messed up, but that's fine. But time is in the future, and that causes anxiety if you think you do not have enough time. And when I do my thing on time, you're going to really be blessed by this. Taking on too many projects or responsibilities invites anxiety. Spending too much money, not living your wage, or acting your wage, spending too much money, getting into debt, and worrying about that will cause anxiety. Eventually, a certain level of anxiety becomes a 24/7 occurrence that we sort of get used to. And that's so sad to me that we can actually get used to anxiety as if it's part of life. But what we don't understand is what's happening there. Add modern stressful living as well as past traumas resulting in vast numbers of people overreacting and even imagining things that don't really exist as threats or stresses or exist at all. Think about this. This happens all the time. When the breathing is not allowed to stay in balance, every reaction to life becomes distorted or negatively magnified. So, this breathing-based distortion is what is called unbalanced dysfunctional breathing, unrevealed dysfunctional breathing, or unbalanced deep breathing. Okay. Kim, why are you telling us about this? Breathe in the Spirit. Let's talk about natural, physiological stuff right now. How does it affect us in our bodies? How do you think it affects you in the Spirit? Kim, what's this got to be about getting to my destiny? You could miss it. You could miss it because of this very thing that the enemy causes to get you in unbalanced breathing. Okay, another aspect is when your mind interprets something that is negative and your unbalanced breathing overreacts in an unbalanced way. And that makes your nervous system get overstimulated and anxiety heads towards what? Panic, high blood pressure, migraines, hot flashes, ulcers, heart attacks, and strokes, and other things as well, which we won't talk about. What do we do? So, if you have that kind of situation, what do? Generally, the first line of defense is to remove a negative stimulus. Okay? So let's talk about that negative stimulus, because in breathing, we have to remove the negative stimulus. Okay? Inactivating the negative. Remember I spoke about that in my Revelation series? It's the same thing with breathing. To get to your destiny, you've got to breathe so you can stay in step. So, the negative stimulus is what I need to talk to you about, because the removal of the negative stimulus, people that know me well, they'll say to you, they'll tell you, he is like a monster when people are negative. I cannot take it, because a negative response or a negative presence is a stimulus that causes your body to react. So remove the negative, not only that externally, but internally, and you watch how it'll affect your breathing. Now, do you know that you can reduce your anxious reactions by the way you are breathing? You can consciously both rebalance, and slow your breathing down and reduce the anxiety level at will. Now that's the power that we have as human beings. This can be quite helpful, but is often a temporary approach. And your body may need more oxygen in the first place. So the long-term best approach is to manage the immediate anxiety and then change and develop your breathing. This is all what doctors tell you, okay? So that it automatically adjusts and you stay calm and you do not get anxious in the first place. I'm helping you, I know, because when you relate this to spiritual breathing, you'll realize it all works the same. It affects your spirit. So courage under fire may be one way of looking at it, but it's really more about relaxing, feeling safe, or balanced inside due to the way you breathe. That's what it's all about. When your breathing overreacts in an unbalanced way, your body often tightens in several areas. You know what I'm talking about. That's why I'm speaking about this today to you students. in the school of the prophet. I'm talking to you about this because you can relate to it. It happened to you an hour before you started this lecture. It happened to you this morning. You know what I'm saying, how your body reacts, how your face flushes when you're upset because of all of this. Have you noticed the one thing that you do when you're really, really upset? You battle for breath. Why? Because that's what it does. And so that's how it is with the spirit. The enemy knows if he can get your spirit, if he can get you to a place where you're suffocating, well, that's when you get out of balance and out of alignment with what God wants for you. So what happens when your body tightens in several areas? You hold your breath, or you breathe shallowly to try and stay in control. I've seen people when they get out of control go, Danny Getty does it all the time. So this only worsens the situation by creating oxygen deprivation. We don't want oxygen deprivation and more tension, which heightens the stress response, and then the tension sets into stay. So doing that with your breathing is not going to help. So I'm telling you this for a reason. Let's move on. So it further restricts respiration and produces shallow, rapid, distorted breathing. I've heard people get mad, they go, you know what I'm saying? Shallow breathing numbs our feelings and traps the anxiety inside, blocking smooth energy flow, which in turn triggers more physiological and psychological arousal, sending us up the anxiety and confusion escalator, and then possibly down into depression and confusion. See what I'm saying? So depression then sets in. Now we see what is often called psychosomatic illness, greatly stemming from that. It means it's all in the mind. It's not really there. And I want to say something to you guys. The reason I do not pray for a lot of people for sickness is because in the early days I was praying for everybody and they weren't getting healed. And I would often look at it and say, what's going on here? And a lot of it is psychosomatic. A lot of it came as a result of anxiety. And the Bible clearly says, be anxious for nothing. Nothing. Be anxious in nothing, for nothing. So breathing naturally and well-grounded, though many do not know what that really feels like or looks like to be breathing naturally and well-grounded. But if you can, it allows us to address the anxiety more rationally. Okay, the entire autonomic nervous system, and through it, of course, our internal organs and glands, is largely driven by our breathing, sequencing, and balance. So by changing our breathing, we can influence millions of biochemical reactions in our body. So I say that again so you can understand it. You can watch this again. But by changing our breathing, we can influence. Changing your breathing influences millions of biochemical reactions in our body, producing more relaxing substances, such as endorphins, and few anxiety-producing ones like adrenaline and high blood acidity. So this is the medical, this is the physiological aspect of it that I wanted to speak to you about. And of course, it's not something I do naturally, but I am telling you that that's how it affects you. So mindfulness of the breath is effective. This is what they teach you in life. Why don't we apply this in the spirit? In John chapter 10, verse 10, this is what it says. The thief does not come except to steal, kill, and to destroy. I have come that they may have life more abundantly. So it's life, life, life. Breathe, breathe, breathe. Very simple, isn't it? Life. Jesus said, I've come that you might have and have it more abundantly. Why? So you can live a wholesome life. Okay? The problem today is not so much somebody's sick or somebody has got a psychological problem. Those are all important. But Jesus said when he healed somebody, he said that they were whole. And that's the whole thing I'm talking about, the centrality. Very important that you understand about being whole, the center of your system, to be balanced. You lose balance, what happens to you? You fall over. This is all about walking in the Spirit, folks. This is very important you understand. I'm going to deal with time now. This is a more informative lesson in terms of I'm giving you a lot of information. And I appreciate the fact that you have this very little time with me, so I'm going to do it the best I can. But I want to say something to you that may bother some of you, but just think about it for a minute. God has to perform something in your life in a certain time and in an era. In an era, not error, E-R-A. So what does he have to do? Are you saying to me, Kim, that God is restricted by time and space? With you being a free will agent, absolutely. So God has planned to do something within a certain time. Let's say he planned to, during the time of the hippie movement, he planned to raise up a Jesus movement that would bring millions of these people out. He had to do it within a certain time. So what happens? You have Woodstock, which is an invention of the enemy, and he thinks that this is going to reduce God's ability to work, because God has to work in time. So what he does is he creates havoc in an evil realm, and it seems like God's not in control. It seems like, what's going on here? How can there be so many people running around naked, taking drugs, at Woodstock, and all this music going out and this filth? What's wrong? Where's God? I was reading earlier on, and I want to talk to you about this for a minute, because we think that God's not in control. So what happens is, and I'll read it to you in Daniel chapter 2. This is what it says. Before I even finish what I'm saying, I want to give this to you, because let's talk about God's ability to work in time, or the inability. So what happens here is, in Daniel chapter 2, it says that God changes the times and the seasons. Okay, he removes kings and raises up kings and gives wisdom to the wise. Now, so in other words, God is in charge, or made the season, made the time. Now that's not in natural only, but for us spiritually, so that something has to happen in a certain time period in order for it to happen. You see what I'm saying? The way technology is going today, we have different methods of operating. God knew that this was going to happen, and so certain things have to happen. So what the enemy does in his pure stupidity, what he does, let me read it to you, Daniel chapter 7, verse 25. This is speaking about our enemy, the same one that Jesus said has come to do what? Steal, kill, and destroy. Steal. Think about stealing. Stealing what? Stealing time. So, your enemy shall speak pompous words against the Most High. He shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and shall intend in his so doing to change times and law. So what's he doing? He knows God has to work within a certain time to get something done, and there's a restriction because human beings control that in terms of they are living in that period, and they can say no, they can be disobedient. So what the enemy tries to do is to get everybody into a place of lax, where they very lax, where they are not active, where spiritually there's nothing happening, and begins to try and change the time and the law so that God cannot operate in that time, because he knows he has to do it in a certain time. And I'll prove that to you in a few minutes. But then it says, then the saints shall be given into the enemy's hands for a time, times, and a half a time. Now, you may be saying, well, that's terrible. No, hold on. For a time and a time or whatever, it seems like the enemy has got complete control. But out of that emerges something incredible. Because if you think about Woodstock or anything like that, where there's a huge attack against morality and so on, what emerges out of that? The enemy says, I've won it. God's will never accomplish this within, in the 60s or the 70s. He'll never do it because I've got them. I'm changing the time so God cannot give or do what he's supposed to do in this generation. And guess what he does? He finds somebody like Jeremiah who gets a vision, and God says, Jeremiah, what do you see? And Jeremiah says, I see a branch from a tree. And God says, you've seen correctly. And because you've perceived correctly and because you've seen correctly, I will hasten my word to perform it. There we go. It's called the redemption of time. God says, you did this within a few years, Satan. Now, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to speeden up this work because I found some people that are prophetic that have seen it, and I'm going to hasten my word to perform it in them. Wow, think about all of this that's happening. You say, okay, so the enemy knows that if he can mess things up in time and change law, that God has to abide by his own rules. That's right. And he does, but he's sneaky. Jehovah sneaky. Let me tell you something he is. Because he finds somebody that is prepared to die for it. That is so passionate and catches the vision and says, I'm going to catch up and find out what it is that God wants for this generation. And suddenly God does a quick work. A quick work. So there you go. Changing times and law. Trying to change the time. What do you mean change the time, Kim? Well, where everybody's caught up in something and the will of God is not being performed. And out of that emerged this great Jesus movement. So remember something. God has to contend with our stubbornness and all the laws of time and space. That's what I was saying. The enemy knows this, so he tries to do it. Steal time, steal opportunities. This is proven over and over in the ancient scriptures. I want you to know that. The changing of times and law. So let's talk about time and space for a few minutes. I'll give you a science lesson here. What are the basic things in the universe? Space. Space, this consists of length, breadth, height, and this is the first thing in the structure of the physical universe. Secondly, matter. What is the nature of that which occupies space? What makes the universe visible, audible, tangible? Energy. And it's measured by its manifestations, mass and velocity. Motion fills and is the physical universe. Now, please understand, motion fills and is the physical universe. All important for you to understand. It presents itself in waves of light, air, sound, and we call them phenomena. Okay, that's why you call me professor, because I'm teaching you like this. Then there's time. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Telling you this on purpose because you need to understand we've just dealt with keeping in step with. Now we're talking about rhythm and step together. How? Why? To get you to your destiny and to get destiny to come forth out of you. Time. 1, 2, 3. Why do I say 3 all the time? The nature of time is past, present, and future. None can exist without the other. Yet each is a whole of its own. So, at the beginning, all time is future. At the beginning, all time is future. The only place you can find time is in the future. You won't find time in the past. So, the beginning, all the time is in the future. In between, all time is present. At the end, all time is past. I won't blow your mind with that one as much, but just think about it for a minute. So, my main interest here is we are living in the present. The past is gone, but it still speaks to us. Why do we ignore the future? Why is it that we think that the future is not important? How can it not be important? Because time comes out of the future, and we need time. We need to breathe out of in time. Let me get this right for you. We need to breathe in time. Where is time? Time is in the future. Is time in the past? No. Although it speaks to us invisibly. So, time comes out of the future, not out of the past. You cannot live and breathe from the past. That's why Jesus said, you cannot live by natural means only. You breathe by the words that come out of God's mouth. Now, that's how you lose your breath and your rhythm. Trying to live where there is no time. Don't try and live where there is no time. Don't stay or dwell in the past. A hurt that you may have. A problem that you had years ago that you've never let go. You know what you're doing? You're dwelling there. And you know what's happening? It's pulling the life out of you. I was in a meeting in San Juan Capistrano and God gave me a word, the woman's name. Called her out of the crowd. Pastor Phil Muncie will verify this. I called her out and said that the doctors have given you X amount of time to live because you have a cancer. She acknowledged it. And suddenly, I started going, and you'll see me do this sometimes when I'm ministering. And I couldn't get my breath. And I was taken out of that moment into the past. And it was horrible. And she was there. She looked different. I saw an alley. I saw the name of the street. I saw 3 men raping her. I knew their names. I came back out of the vision into now, and I said, so-and-so, 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 at such a street, and she just crumbled down and fell, weeping, grabbing my legs, weeping and weeping. What happened? She was living in the past. That's what she was doing. She was living in the past. And the result was she was trying to stay alive in the past. Think about this now. There is no time in the past. There is no life. There is no breath in the past. And so what the Lord showed me was that she was living her spirit. Her spirit was in the past because she wouldn't let it go. She was dwelling there. And the minute I said that to her, I said, I'm taking you out from the past. I'm removing you from that yesterday. You forgive them right now. And as she did, the power of God hit her. And then I said, now this is the future. This is what the future is. Such and such will happen. You'll see your grandchild at such and such an age. And I started getting information from the future and throwing it into her. What was I doing? I was taking time and I was taking breath and life and putting it into her spirit. Think about that for a minute. And I'm saying this to you today because some of you may be sitting in a position, I feel it right now, in a position where you've got things that you're holding on to in the past that have hurt you and you won't let it go. You are in a prison of resentment and you are being suffocated, and that's why you're not in step with the Spirit and you're out of alignment. I free you from that this very second. I want you to pray a prayer with me now. We're going to ask God to forgive. I want you to forgive them, that situation, or let go of that thing that happened in your past right now. In the name of the Lord Christ, whom I serve, these dear, wonderful students, Lord, and the many thousands will watch after this, let them be free this very minute from the power of the past. And Lord, as they forgive and they let go, I pray now, give them information from the future. Give them nourishment and life. Let the words of God from the future come to them now. And let them breathe. Let them breathe, Lord, right now. And I command sickness and whatever problems are in their life to go right now. And Lord, as they come out of the past, whatever it is, and they align their spirits, I pray now, Lord, let there be a redemption of time. And give them what they've lost, Give them what they've lost. Do a miracle. Align their bodies. Let their bodies suddenly come into. And Father, the stress that I sense, I free them from that now, right now, in Jesus' name. Beautiful. Beautiful. Now, I think you're on your way. You're on your way. You have no excuse. See, that's how we lose our breath and our rhythm, trying to live where there is no time. See, for a long time, it was next year. Then next month, then tomorrow. Time's getting closer. Hello? Now it's today. 2010 is now today. 3 years ago, it was 3 years away. Then suddenly 2010 will be next month. Are you with me? Excuse me, it'll become yesterday. It'll become last week. It'll become last month. So it moves, and it's important that you understand that. It moves from future to present to past. That is the unbroken order of the motion of time. It was next year, next month, now it's today. Now it's yesterday, last week, last month. History came into the present from out of the past. Historical truth and creative truth. 2 types of truth. The past can teach you. It can help you. But the future has created an incredible past for you. Now, I'm going to say this slowly because it's a difficult one to understand. I wrote this myself, and I didn't even understand when I wrote it. I had to explain to myself what was going on. The future has created, God in the future has created an incredible past for you. What does that mean? if you can allow your future to happen in your life, it has nothing but good and powerful stuff. So therefore, if you can obey what you see and do it, you will create a great past. Abraham is a great past. Why? Because he obeyed God. He followed God. He believed God. He sacrificed when God told him to. He gave when God told him to. What happened? He was creating a great past. That's the power that we have. Or you can mess it up. Only you can change that negatively. Only you can make a bad past. Now, a lot of us have done that, so we won't talk about that. But the point is that you can create a good past by finding out what the future is and living it. So that's what destiny is all about. Destiny gives you a great heritage. Your destiny has a great past in it. Your destiny has great memories in it. Your destiny will make you a great forefather. Are you with me? So, when God shows you your future, it is actually how He wants your past to be. That's very important that you understand. That's what destiny is all about. Time comes to us from out of the future. Time comes to us from out of the future. We continually are breathing spiritually from the future, if we allow it, if we don't live in the past. Okay, so we continually meet time instant by instant. That's why the present is always instantaneous, because we do not go with it, we meet it. The future is the source. Write that down. What is the source of your life, of your breath, of your oxygen, spiritual, if you wish, is the future. The future is the source. I love the future. It has life, it has breath, opportunities, challenges, order, chaos, energy, and time. How many of you out there need time? It's in the future. The future is the reservoir out of which the present comes. The future is unseen, unknown, except as it continually embodies itself and makes itself visible in the present. That's the future, will make itself visible in the present. It has to. And also by the prophetic insight and revelation that you have, you know what the future is. It just suddenly doesn't come upon you. You have an idea. The present, or your destiny, is what we see, hear, and know. It is perpetually revealing the future. The present is perpetually revealing the future as well. So tomorrow when it comes, it is today. The future is logically first, but not chronologically. Are you confused yet? The present exists as long as time exists, and it was in the absolute beginning of time. So time makes itself visible only in the present. So we need to be present, of course. The future acts and reveals itself through the present. So I'm trying to show you how this huge thing that you have inside of you is, you are just one incredible character. But the future is coming to you all the time. Now, decisions, very important decisions to get you there. That's why you need the prophetic in your life. You have an idea what you are supposed to do one day. It's through the present that time and the future enters into union with your life. I have to say that again. It's through the present that time and the future enters into union with your life. That's why what you do today is so important. That's what I'm trying to say. It affects you, what you do today. It is in the present that time and the future becomes part of a human life. Time and the future become part of a human life, and so is born and lives and dies in human life. Your destiny is born, it lives, and it dies in your human life. Now, it can be transferred to others to continue that, but that's how unique you are. Doesn't it make you feel special that you carry this inside of you? And that's how important you are. And that's why the enemy attacks you. The present perpetually and ever newly embodies the future in visible, audible, living form, and returns again into the historical time in the past. The past acts invisibly. Now, we cannot get rid of the past. It continually influences us intellectually with regard to the present, parents, experiences, relationships, knowledge, emotions. But now let's talk about spiritually. Spiritually, we live and breathe and advance from the future in our present bodies. Very simple. We are nourished by vision. Without vision, what happens? Without vision, you perish. You know what the word perish is? It means, in the Hebrew, it's para, which means to decay. So if you don't have vision, if you don't have hope, you decay. I think I'm getting through to you with this. I hope you understand this, that your time on earth is very, very important, because the future is coming to you all the time. Now, you've got to know what's ahead of you. And so you're nourished by that. So your present body advances because of the future. Now, have you ever heard where it says where hope is deferred, that people can actually die? Without hope, people die before their time. A lot of people go into retirement and die early because they have nothing to go to. There's no vision for them. That's why it's important that you understand vision is in the future. You get there and there's more vision. When you get to the place where you feel you've accomplished, you know what you have to do then? You have to look for the next level of hope, because hope keeps you alive and it keeps you going. That's very important to understand. There's faith, there's hope, and there's love. These three things. But the strongest is love. Why? Because love ties the two together. Without love, you're lost. And so you need love to understand faith, and you need love to understand hope. Okay? So what are the three things? Space, substance, and time. You, my dear friends, my dear, dear students, have been given a wonderful opportunity to understand the future, to understand that there is a time that God has set for you, to understand that in that time you have to perform something, and God will do whatever it takes to get you to get that to happen in your life. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to close with Genesis chapter 32, and I'm going to tell it to you very quickly, and then in the next lecture I'll probably spend more time on it. It's about Jacob being left alone with God. And it's about him crossing over the ford of Jabbok and getting to where he is alone with God. And it says a man wrestled with him. We know it's God, until the breaking of day. And when he saw, this is God, that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he said, "Let me go, for the day breaks." He said to Jacob, hold it there, "Let me go, for the day breaks." What are you talking about? Let me go. God, how can I let you go? What's the hurry, God? It's daybreak. What I have to do here must be done by daybreak. This is what God's saying, but why would God need to get out? And Jacob says, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." It's a fascinating story, but it tells me that there is a time restriction for God to do certain things in our lives. Okay? That's how important you are to Him. I pray today that you would understand that breathing in the Spirit is very, very vital, and that you get freed from unbalanced breathing, and that the stress that comes, that the enemy tries to bring to take your breath away, would be removed today. And I congratulate you for listening to this and for understanding it. There's freedom coming to you, and I release you into that now, and I say to you, God bless you.